Then we move on to you, Jonathan. Thank you for waiting. Now we move into the Earth's observation sphere and glaciology in the science perspective. So Jonathan, how can ground-based research complement models, satellites, remote sensing data for more holistic understanding of Arctic systems?
Yeah, okay, well, thanks for the question. I'll try and keep it brief because I want to leave, or we all want to leave time for questions from the floor, and I can hear some stomachs rumbling. Maybe it's just mine, but we'll try and keep it brief anyway. So I think sometimes there's a bit of a misunderstanding that observation scientists believe that satellites can do everything they want them to. They can make all the observations that they want, and they global. You have 14 orbits a day. You get everything you want. Actually, that is a misunderstanding, one of the issues with satellite observations is they often don't make the observation you're actually interested in. They can only measure something at the surface, and it may be a proxy, an indirect measurement of the thing you're interested in. Let's talk about a specific example relevant to the Arctic. One of the holy grails in Earth observation or satellite remote sensing of polar regions is what's called snow water equivalent. So we can measure snow area quite well with satellite observations. Snow depth, just getting the depth of the snow is quite tricky with satellite data. To get snow water equivalent, you also need the density. And there are missions, and there's a satellite, actually a really cool one called NISA, which is a collaboration between the Indian Space Agency and NASA for a dual frequency radar mission, which may be able to get snow water equivalent, but without those ground-based observations, those satellite data are almost meaningless. Because it's absolutely vital that we both calibrate the satellite observations and we validate them. And so really, in situ data are vital. And I just made one additional comment to my CV actually, which is that my first fieldwork was in 1984 in Svalbard, so 40 years ago. And I have seen incredible change in Svalbard in those 40 years. In every respect, actually, there was no infrastructure there at all. There was nothing. We stayed in a hut at the airport, and that was it. No hotels. So that's changed. But I mean, in terms of the climate as well, as Per said, that the Arctic is warming over those 40 years 4 times faster than global average, and you can see it. You can see it everywhere. So that's a little aside, but I have a personal experience of the changing Arctic.
Yeah, cool. So where do you see gaps? Now we'll try again to link to Interact and where we can help. So where do you see gaps in the monitoring of the changing Arctic and where Interact can help?
Yeah, okay, so there's no single answer to that question. I mean, I try not to witter on for hours, but I could in answer to that. This is very much my personal perspective. I have for at least 2 decades been an open science advocate. I think it's absolutely fundamental to everything we do. Why are we doing science? It's not for our own personal glory, it's for the benefit of all of us, right? And I think one of the most, I've looked at the Interact program, and one of the work packages is related to data archival and data curation, and I think that that's absolutely essential for not only the Earth observation community to use, but for all of us to be able to access the data and use it in a constructive and useful way. Now, there are these archives. People have been doing field work in the Arctic for decades, including me, and it might just sit in a cupboard somewhere, which is of no use to anyone. And I think it will be really valuable if the Interact community, all the stations that are involved in the program, ensure that the data that are collected through through their stations are made what's called fair. So that's fine. It's the fair constraints for data curation. So that's findable,
accessible,
interoperable, and reproducible. And I think if Interact can ensure that that happens, that will be an incredible service to the community.
And I'm glad to inform you that we have the Interact data portal, where actually it's about 30 of our stations share data through this portal, or you can access the data through this portal.
Yeah, but there will be so many people coming through your stations who, maybe because of who is funding them, there are constraints, IPR issues around the data, and it may not be that they collect these really valuable data sets and they don't end up.
Yeah.
there.
And maybe that's also an issue for the funders who need to put a requirement on data sharing in research. Yeah. Well, thank you all of you for excellent answers to the questions. So a hand to the panel.